Delver as these players are getting shuffled up and actually are already ready to go. Jon Bender starting out the iconic Underground Sea into Delver of Secrets. Daniel Rude there on your left with the new take of Welder and Painter, whatever the evolution is. Going to start off with Bloodstained Mire and Lotus Petal. Very pretty Lotus Petal.
No, at this point, if I'm Daniel, I'm putting down the Storm counter to put the fear into Jon.
It's already announcing Storm count. All right, yeah, I'm dead. Grab your Underground Sea. Here comes Dark Ritual, Tendrils of Agony. Not quite, as here is Basic Mountain and a nod of the head from Jon Bender.
Yeah, I have no idea which kind of wild ride Daniel is going to take us on. I'm all for that. I want to explore that. There's even like stuff like the random 3 copies of Broadside Bombardiers in here, which kind of like feels like a card that's, well, if anything goes wrong and all of our synergies break down, we can still go to the face and like hit for a ton of damage, which is even funnier when you involve like super expensive cards like Phyrexian Devourer. I hope we're going to see that one in action. But for now, it's only going to be Bowmasters taking out Java and asking Jon, do you have days? You don't? Okay, then we I guess made up for the card disadvantage of
brutal. Yeah, you want to talk about a days check? That's quite the days check. Turn 1, Lotus Petal into Orcish Bowmasters. Has to use the pedal to power it out, but what a way to start the game off. Able to pick off Delver of Secrets before it can flip into Insectile Aberration with the ETB trigger. Now has 2 power in play, and Brainstorms come at a massive cost for the Grixis Delver deck, who is just going to deploy a Underground Sea and pass back to Daniel Rude. Has to be excited to see that. And of course, a little bit Wasteland resilient is Daniel Rude with his Mountain.
Yeah, and from Jon's side, just dropping down another Underground Sea. Looks like he doesn't have access to red mana. So at this point, I'm feeling really good on Daniel's side of the board. If I can find more lands, I got the Urza Saga. That's gonna like definitely facilitate my game plan. Could be a Goblin Engineer coming down, and then I have no idea what you put in the graveyard from there. But I think Daniel, considering that he's got a stack in. No, I thought he had a stack in hand. So as in searching with a engineer.
Right. I was saying, when you play just Underground Sea Go, I feel like on your radar has to immediately be Orcish Bowmasters. This is what the format's about after all, and able to flash in his own and then trade off Orcish Army tokens with a Goblin Welder follow up. So this actually might have been a little bit of a bait from Daniel Rude.
Great choice here. Like you trade off your card that already did a lot of damage to the opponent, and then you get the most important centerpiece of your deck down, which otherwise would be very, very vulnerable to the Bowmasters here. But then you're ready to untap, and now you could, deploy. You've got everything in the board open to you. You can just like go down the construct route, try to race in a fair game. If you end up happening like another artifact, you could try to get some big Chaos Defiler into play if you happen to have Goblin Engineer, but Jon still has to pass the turn, and it looks like Jon actually found some red mana. Probably deploying, I would guess, either like a removal spell on the Welder or his own copy of Dragon Rage Channel. Yeah, makes sense.
All right, so a little bit extra of pressure coming down, as here the Urza Saga will roll up to 2. This deck, more so than others, looks to be primarily an Urza Saga deck. I mean, looking to win with the constructs, alongside the potential for Goblin Welder shenanigans. Now, we do need another land if we want to start making constructs right away. It is going to be a swamp. So we have the basic swamp to pair with our mountain, and here comes Fable of the Mirror Breaker. No days for turn 1 Bowmasters, no days now either. Thumbs up from Jon Bender, and we have Fable of the Mirror Breaker first chapter resolving.
Okay, that's going to be something. Next turn, we're going to get the ultimate of the Saga going, which from what we've seen could either find like additional mana sources, or it could find Pip-Boy 3000, which is a card I couldn't have named better. I guess that's from Fallout anyway. And we already talked about this right before the game, Drake, right? Because I feel like Pip-Boy is not there yet with regards to legacy power levels. But you made a good point that it can also untap your Saga if you happen to find a second one and then like make additional copies of constructs. But I mean, I feel like that's a lot to ask for. I don't think that's the line that we can afford to go for here, considering that we are under some pressure at least. So I'm
maybe not so good in this matchup. Probably a little bit, more focused on either, the draw discard to power up your welders, or, obviously multiple Saga draws, which we're certainly not at yet. No Shadow Spear is certainly an interesting choice. I believe the targets for third chapter include Lotus Petal, Mox Opal, and of course the Pip-Boy 3000. I'm not sure what. Oh, Haywire Mite as well. That one's in the creature section, so easy to miss there. But a few options, and overall, it looks like Mox Opal more often than not probably the card you want to grab, just to set your mana up a little bit better. in order to continue to weld things in and out of the graveyard. But Dragon Ridge Channeler alongside Lightning Bolt does mean that Daniel Rude's board more or less gone. Still has that Goblin Shaman token available. Of course, from the Showdown winners last year. Got to see them at last year's NRG Championship. Their tokens still getting plenty of use thanks to the Fable of the Mirror Breaker showing up now in both rounds we've commentated of Legacy action here as 4th land fetched for Jon Bender, access to a 2nd red mana. Only 2 cards left in hand. Murktide looks to be among them. Is it Murktide time?
It's definitely going to be Murktide here.
Okay.
We were missing Delirium, so there was no point in attacking with Dragon Wedge Channeler first. I think we were still missing something like a Ponder to try to get some extra damage here. We're going to make the Murktide here big enough to close the game quickly-ish, if that's a word. And Daniel, not too happy. Like, I think the card that Daniel definitely wants here is the one of Ensnaring Bridge that he's got in the deck. It's going to be tough to find that one. We're probably going to need a Goblin Engineer to put in the graveyard. I mean, you can always naturally draw it, but these are not the powers that are ever present, I guess. Daniel trying to figure out whether he wants to make a construct.
I think we're resolving the 2nd chapter of Fable first. So we actually have 2 triggers here from our various sagas. So we have 2nd chapter of Fable the Mirror Breaker, an option to discard some cards and draw some cards. And then, of course, the 3rd chapter from Urza Saga. Looks like we chose the float mana. No constructs made through this entire process. And searching we go with Urza Saga. Few targets available, like I mentioned. We'll see exactly where Daniel wants to go.
Might even be a Lotus Petal. Yeah, and actually ends up being a Lotus Petal because we are pretty, like, if you don't make a construct, then the Mox Opal is not going to be turned on for a very long time. And, like, when you look at this, what you're facing down, yes, Jon doesn't have Delirium yet, and it's just a 1/1 Bowmaster that you could technically block, I guess. But this looks to spiral out of control really quickly. Like, even just a Ponder could send the Dragon Ridge Channeler to the air very quickly. And I think on Daniel's side of the board, we can't really see what he's got in hand. He obviously didn't really want to use the 2nd chapter here. I think he's got the Mite. Is that a Mite? I'm not sure.
Yeah, he's got... I mean, clearly has something, right? He didn't want to discard any cards to the Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Has some cards he wants to cast. And we will see what we're doing here. I believe so we resolve them in the other order. They both tick up to get the counter, and then I think the triggers go on the stack, and you order them at that time. And obviously, Daniel's going to know how that works. Having more sagas in his deck than probably any other Legacy deck has that figured out. Chaos Defiler going to hit the bin, and there is Ensnaring Bridge, like you called out, from the floating mana from Urza Saga. 2 lands tapped, doesn't have to use his Lotus Petals, which is a very big bonus as well. Now his hand mostly cleared, that Murktide locked down. And there is Ensnaring Bridge. Creatures with power greater than the number of cards in your hand can't attack. And, of course, the Bowmasters did get a trigger thanks to the Saga. So now the Orcish army is back. Here comes a Ponder and a Surveil from Dragon's Ridge Channeler.
You know what I love? Actually, I love that Danny decided to discard for the 2nd chapter here, knowing that that's going to give a token to Jon. And also a ping of damage, which, by the looks of it, I think went on the Shaman there. Maybe he expected something. I don't know. And Daniel already knew if this bridge is going to resolve, then it doesn't really matter. And then I'd rather draw an extra card. Or maybe he actually ended up drawing the Ensnaring Bridge off the extra card he drew of the Fable. We can't really say. But right now, this is the perfect spot. And let me actually take a look at the deck list of Jon, because they don't always play. Looks like there's no bounce spell in here.
Yeah, no bounce spell. Molten Collapse, kind of the card you would use, but Ensnaring Bridge, a 3-mana card, and Force of Will drawn off of, I think, the Blind Ponder. A little late to the party, as here is Reflection of Kiki Jiki, who can be added to the mix here. And now this Ensnaring Bridge, a really big problem for the Grixis Delver deck. Usually when you're under Ensnaring Bridge or something like, if you can't Force of Will it, you got to hope that you've gotten enough damage through the beginning of the game in order to use bolts and things of that nature to kind of burn out your opponent. Going to be kind of hard to do here.
Yeah, I think Jon's best bet here is for Daniel not to be able to resolve all of his spells and eventually like being stuck with cards in hand, which is so unlikely. So I'm not sure. Yeah, he's like, do you even want to attack here? You got 2/2s.
Yeah, you have to like attack with the 1/1 and then upgrade it. As here's an Entomb, I believe, on end step. So this one, two copies of Entomb complement the Goblin Engineers for ways to get artifacts in your graveyard. And I believe, additionally, there's a Phyrexian Dragon Engine as a thing you can just get to unearth. It's like if you just want to get something started. And that may be the direction that Daniel wants to go. We'll see exactly what his intent is.
I would guess. I mean, if you have to sacrifice your Lotus Petals to get the Phyrexian Dragon Engine down, you might end up in a spot where you actually have to pass where the opponent's able to attack. Might not be the end of the world considering that we're still at 18, but maybe we're just going to do it anyway we're going to do it anyway because we want to get rid of the Entomb in our hand. So there's actually a combo in here. We talked about this, that usually the deck plays Painter and Grindstone, but Daniel's like, no, we don't play these bad cards. We play the good cards in Legacy, which apparently are Phyrexian Devourer and Walking Ballista. So what you can do here is you can put Phyrexian Devourer and Walking Ballista in your graveyard. Then eventually you need to find Agatha's Soul Cauldron. So you remove both of those cards and put like +1/+1 counters in any creatures. It doesn't really matter. I guess you could even like hardcast the Walking Ballista, then you only need to use the Soul Cauldron once. What you need is you need a creature that has the ability of Walking Ballista to ping the opponent, and you need a creature that has the Phyrexian Devourer ability, which is a little bit more complicated, but basically comes down to you get to put tons of +1/+1 counters on it as you exile the top of your library. And since you don't copy the clause of having to sacrifice the creature once it reaches a certain power, you can just like grow a really big Walking Ballista and shoot at your opponent's face. And depending on how
it looks like we're stopping that from happening. Jon Bender, force of willing. He has Agatha Soul Cauldron, which does enable the combo you just mentioned, Phyrexian Devourer, and then a Walking Ballista if you need it. Of course, the Phyrexian Devourer can just make a pretty large creature to attack if you want to just do it that way, although it does come at the cost of a chunk of your deck. So a little bit of a weird card, like you said. But Jon Bender not messing with it, has his force of will with his 5th mana thanks to the Wasteland that is left uncracked. And now rumbling across the red zone with a delirious Dragon's Rage Chandler. No, he's not. Too many cards in hand for Daniel Rude. And back over to Daniel we go. And Jon Bender, I mean, doing a good job stopping himself from getting comboed out. With the trigger on the stack for Saga, he's going to Wasteland it. There is an opportunity to do that before it can even be tapped for mana, because it does not yet have the ability to tap for mana, as there's a trigger when it enters the battlefield. So second copy of Saga gone for Daniel, but no rush, as Ensnaring Bridge keeping him safe over these many turns. And now
this is going to be rough.
A lot of trouble.
So basically, Jon already spent a Lightning Bolt, so there's like 3 extra copies of Lightning Bolt. Let's say that's like 3 damage, and then you got 9 damage, so you got 3 more copies of Bowmaster, so that's 12 damage. So theoretically, your deck can produce 12 points of reach, which is like far from enough, and you're probably also not going to draw all of these cards anyway. But that's what you're on. You try to like stifle Daniel's mana development, and maybe you're going to get a hit in here and there. You already need that anyway, right? Because you don't have to reach. But you're at a point where I could see Jon conceding just because he needs to win 2 more games after this. But I also don't fault him for playing it out, because also Daniel's deck looks really weird, and you'd rather get a little bit more information about it.
Yeah, a little smile from Jon as Phyrexian Devourer is the card put in the graveyard, as you mentioned, a card that is strange and really only shows up when your opponent's up to no good. And up to no good is Daniel indeed. Did choose to make a copy of the Goblin Shaman token on end step, and then cast Entomb, which did get a daze from Jon, paid with the Lotus Petal in order to grab this Phyrexian Devourer. And now that token that was made on end step does not get exiled until the beginning of the next end step, so can attack with it. Gonna get blocked by Murktide, but does make a treasure for its trouble. So basically got his Lotus Petal back.
It's actually kind of, I was going to say, like, yeah, I guess you trade for the Lotus Petal. Actually, you don't really.
Yeah, get it back.
This is like the chess equivalent where you feel like you get to grab a pawn, but like 4 moves down, you get to regain the pawn and didn't really win anything.
And not winning anything, it seems to be Jon's board state here as he goes into the tank post-draw step. Molten Collapse not solving a ton of problems. Second copy of Dragon's Rage Channeler and second copy of Murktide Regent among the mix. And I think we might be just thinking about ways out of this Ensnaring Bridge in his deck. Not a ton that we see on the deck list now. We'll see if he can come up with some kind of plan.
In the main deck, there's literally nothing. There's nothing we can do about that.
Well, if we can find a way to get Daniel to have 2 cards. So Jon Bender does have a single copy of Broadside Bombardiers, and he can attack with it and fling a Murktide at his opponent. And then we're talking about a big damage chunk, and then maybe the remaining lightning bolts do make up. But you need to find a way to attack with some 2-power creatures. There's some problems involved, and it would involve Daniel, like if he does the Phyrexian Dragon Engine thing, drawing a bunch of lands that he can't get rid of. Right? Like there's some things that need to go right, I think, for you to make this happen, and you do need to find the copy of Broadside Bombardiers, now present in both of those decks, before you die. Not a lot going on for Daniel, but we'll see what Jon does come up with. As here's a copy of Orcish Bowmasters. That will ping the Goblin Shaman, the original Goblin Shaman. Use Molten Collapse to take care of the Reflection of Kiki Jiki. Too much shenanigans going on there. And here comes a copy of Dead Gone, going after the Bowmasters.
I love that Daniel just like looked at this deck and he decided, you know what this deck needs? 3 copies of Dead Gun. Which, like, first of all, you think, like, what's the synergy here? I don't even get it. It's just like, yeah.
It has a high CMC for Devourer. Is that something that you were ever sensitive to?
Okay, once we start looking into that, like,
I don't know. I'm just saying, like, you know, there's some merit when we're talking about the split card nature of it. It does pick up Murktide Regent. That can be a pretty hard card for a mono red, or even just like a red black. I mean, it's very light on black to answer.
Basically, I guess the idea is that it's an auto Merit Lage. If that ever happens to be the deck you're sitting across from, so I can see it. Like, you traditionally in these spots, the painter decks would play Lightning Bolt, but I very much see that. I mean, what Daniel is trying to do there with the Dead Gun. I just like, it feels like such a random card to include and then go really hard on it, but it makes sense when you think about that Merit Lage. Yeah, like, all these decks are reasonable legacy decks, so you happen to have some main deck insurance against those.
Second copy of Murktide Regent does come down, and that one's going to be a 4/4. Notably, I believe we have missed the triggers on the other Murktide Regent to grow it even bigger, which doesn't matter. Obviously, neither of them are attacking underneath Ensnaring Bridge. Completely moot at this point, as Broadside Bombardiers is added to the mix for Daniel Rude. And back to Jon Bender we go with his massive army ready to kill Daniel, but can't, because this Ensnaring Bridge is just in the way. And now Goblin Welder, no longer summoning sick, able to start going to work. And I know there's a Chaos Defiler from earlier. He's going to get instead the Agatha's Soul Cauldron that was Force of Willed. And that one, now that Devourer in the yard, things start to look somewhat problematic. Jon Bender getting a look at the graveyard. And we're going to activate right away. There's Agatha's Soul Cauldron. So, okay, a lot of text in this card, and it is a weird one. You may spend manas that were mana of any color to activate abilities of creatures you control. Creatures you control have +1/+1 encounters on them, have all activated abilities of all cards exiled with Agatha's Soul Cauldron. And you can tap it, exile target card from a graveyard. When a creature is exiled this way, you get to put a counter on a creature you control. So, we're going to do that right away, and underneath it goes Phyrexian Devourer. So now, creatures that have a +1/+1 counter on them have the ability to exile a top card of your library and grow according to the converted mana cost. Now, theoretically, you could make creatures arbitrarily large with this ability, as Goblin Engineer is attempted to be cast, and as Force of Willed, as Jon Bender sniffed out, Walking Ballista, the missing piece, because then you don't even need to attack. And underneath the Ensnaring Bridge, that can potentially be challenging. And is able to Force of Will the Goblin Engineer.
I think at this point, Jon should seriously consider just like scooping it up here. There's probably not much. You talked about how there's a way, right, for Goblin Bombardier to Broadside Bombardiers. Maybe we can create an opportunity there. But now that Daniel actually has a reasonable amount of mana, I guess we're saying if we continuously force Daniel to use the Ancient Tomb, eventually he won't be able to. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't. That feels optimistic to me. I mean, at this point, though, I do believe Daniel Rude is very close to winning the game. As here comes Chaos Defiler. That one worded strangely from the Warhammer set. This one, the big one that started this deck being played on Magic Online, do need it as one of your artifact targets in order to really set this deck off. The ability to answer permanents and pick off these Dragon's Rage channelers, worded in such a way that in 1v1, it's kind of like Council's Judgment, right? Where in 1v1, you just pick a thing and blow it up. And yeah, Jon Bender sees the writing on the wall. We're going to start to loop this Chaos Defiler until everything's out of the way, and then you can attack with one of your creatures and are able to make your creature arbitrarily large with the Phyrexian Devourer ability and end the game. And that's enough for Jon Bender to pick it up. And, you know, the Rakdos combo deck, this Welder deck, able to win game number 1. Grixis Delver, traditionally one of the better decks in the format.
Yeah, it's just that was quite something. I think we actually saw this deck in action in the way that we wanted to. It got to abuse Agatha Soul Cauldron. It was able to actually really stabilize the game with the one of Ensnaring Bridge. I'm actually curious whether there's going to be additional copies in the sideboard. By the looks of it, no. I guess we can never just like naturally find it.
Well, let's take a look at the Grixis Delver sideboard here, see if we can improve on the matchup here a little bit. We got 2 copies of Brazen Borrower, 2 copies of Hydroblast, 2 Price of Progress, 2 Pyroblast, 2 Surgical Extraction, 1 Counterbalance, 1 Grafdigger's Cage, 1 Meltdown, 1 Unholy Heat, and 1 Unlicensed Hearse. Yeah, what adjustments can we make in order to answer the artifact decks?
I'm still reading the Tithing Blade. I've never seen that card in action before. I hope we're going to see it in action next time. But usually, these cards that require a lot of things to go right don't really slot well into Delver matchups. I guess we could bring in Pyroblasts because in a scrappy game, Murktide region is one of the ways that we could actually lose the game. Other than that, not too much I want to bring in here. Like the Scarab Swarm is kind of cool, but we're probably not going to get enough value out of it, considering it's a 4-mana thing.
You're looking at the Rakdos.
Oh, sorry.
I was like, I don't see any of these cards in the Grixis Delver sideboard.
From a Grixis Delver side, it's usually like pretty straightforward. They want all the meltdowns they have. They got a one-off meltdown that looks good. Unlicensed Hearse, you definitely want. You Grafdigger's Cage, it's awkward. Like depending. We leave that up to Jon. I probably wouldn't bring in Grafdigger's Cage. I want to preserve some kind of offense still. I would bring in the 2 copies of Brazen Borrower for sure. The Hydroblasts look good. Maybe, I think the Price of Progress that's already reaching. But yeah, Brazen Borrowers, Meltdowns, Unlicensed Hearse, and you take out... Like, it's kind of awkward. Like, Stifle has the potential to really blow out the game, so maybe I'm actually going to keep the one of Stifle. What do you take out here? Like Molten Collapse, maybe?
Molten Collapse didn't look that good in the game. They was just picking off some random bozos. I obviously we're gonna leave this up to Jon Bender. This is a relatively new deck, so he may not even be totally sure of himself. As like I said, this deck is a relative newcomer to the format, but certainly needs to find some answers to Ensnaring Bridge. Obviously, Meltdown, a big piece of the puzzle. Brazen Borrowers are as well. And those are some additional threats. Brazen Borrower being a doubling as a bounce spawn threat means that you can actually trim on your threats a little bit. And then now let's take a look at the Rakdos combo deck from Daniel Rude. Now you already were looking at the sideboard a little bit, reading some of the cards. I'm going to read off the cards that are present in the sideboard here. We got 3 Opposition Agent, 3 Pyroblast, 2 Surgical Extraction, 1 Tithing Blade, 1 Pyrokinesis, 1 Pithing Needle, 1 Ethersworn Canonist, 1 Canoptech Scarab Swarm, 1 Shenanigans, and 1 Fury. A lot of one-ofs here, a lot of artifact targets. What do we like in the Delver matchup?
So as I already preemptively mentioned, you do want to bring in the Pyroblast. There's a chance that they will be stranded in your hand, but I mean that's the price you have to pay for such a powerful card. And then other than that, not really all that much. Like I guess there's a world where you could bring in Fury, especially if you want to like deal with some kind of like Bowmasters and stuff. But I think it also heavily depends on how much of your stuff you want to set out. I already mentioned that I don't think this is the matchup for Pip-Boy. Breast Tunnel Grinder is also usually like more for controllers matchups, so you can take that one out. Sometimes we take out, okay, we got 4 copies of Lotus Petals. Maybe even Mox Opal, but usually end up regretting it. So there's not Haywire Mite. I guess that's an easy one to take out there.
Haywire Mite looks pretty bad. I'd say not a lot of artifacts and enchantments in the Delver deck.
Maybe Entomb. It depends on how ready you feel to play a fair match. If you feel like you can go toe-to-toe in a fair matchup, you could take out the Entomb. And the more that I think about it, I don't hate the dead guns all that much. Like you can even bounce like a Murktide Regent and reset it that way. So yeah,
every threat, kills all the creatures and bounces the Murktides. Love it.
Yeah, I can see it, I guess. What's going to be interesting is Daniel gonna be able to once again set up the game in a way that his Welders get to live. Because we already saw in the first game, right? Daniel set it up in a way that, I guess you can say the game played out in a way that Daniel was able to kill the Delver of Jon with the Bowmaster and then lost his own Bowmaster to Jon's Bowmaster. Oh, dude, I'll never grow tired of that play pattern. It's so amazing.
Oh yeah, you love it so much.
all the fans of that play pattern in chat, hands up in chat. And then, but at the end of that all, he was able to stick the Welder around and keep it around and do all the broken stuff. And that's what his deck wants to do. And traditionally, we would sometimes even side out Delvers against these Bowmaster decks. But with how dependent this deck is on like Welders and Engineers doing their thing, I don't think you can do that. So you want to run out the Welders and hope you can keep them around.
Well, we'll see exactly what Daniel can do that. I believe Daniel's still in the process of mulliganing, selecting some cards. I see a lot of red cards in Jon's hand, and so any potential of Welders sticking around feels somewhat mitigated by the potential of them just getting bolted down. And we'll see how Daniel can slog through that as we have the potential to have a little bit more of a competitive game. Ensnaring Bridge, more or less just locking out Grixis Delver in game 1, can be pretty brutal as a turn 1 Dragon's Rage Channeler, followed up by Ancient Tomb into Agatha's Soul Cauldron on turn 1, jammed directly into Daze. No fear for Daniel Rood, and it is in play.
That's so good. That's so good. It's so hard to get Delirium with Agatha's Soul Cauldron on the other side of the board. I think we've seen Jan having a second copy of Dragon Rage Channeler, but by the way he sequences spells, I would think he doesn't have a second land yet, so he wants to make sure he gets that land and then runs out the Dragon Rage Channeler. If he doesn't find one here, that's almost like a time walk for Daniel, but good chance that he just found one.
The secret mode of Agatha's Soul Cauldron is like, obviously there's all these powerful Phyrexian Devourer combos, all those kinds of things you can do. It also just works as graveyard hate. You can just exile a card every turn or whatever, like all this text on the card, it could also just be a Relic of Progenitus.
It very much is. I mean, that's part of the reason why it's played so much. When I recently played in a tournament, people afterwards asked, so what is the reason you play this? And it really doesn't come down to one thing. It basically does like 3 different things. And it does them all reasonably well, and they all contribute in kind of like even terms to why the card is good. It's not just like the combo. Like a lot of times you might even side out the Phyrexian Devourer because you feel it's just like too shaky. And I mean, it's a great way to win, to close out games quickly against combo decks. But even here, I could see a world where you side out the Devourer. But then he will show us what he's up to. For now, he's just going to deny Delirium for a long time, relegating the Dragon Rage Channeler to being basically a surveil machine that every once in a while deals a bit of damage.
Yeah, and that seems to be very much kind of where both players are at as they develop mana. The Scalding Tarn and Lotus Petal for Daniel Rood, and then just 2 uncracked fetch lands from Jon Bender. He looks a little bit like he's having fun. He's like, what's the point of putting the cards in graveyard? They just get exiled. So, maybe you can assemble a turn where there's like a burst of cards, and you can overpower the 1 card a turn cadence of Agatha's Soul Cauldron as a graveyard hate piece. But for the time being, looks like he's content to just beat down for 1 with the Dragon's Rage Channeler. And as we saw previously, gonna need a little bit more of a clock if you're going to be able to kill Daniel Rood before you can really get his talons in on this game as far as the prison aspects of this Goblin Welder, Goblin Engineer, Welder combo deck goes.
Yeah, and Jon is sitting on a Broadside Bombardier that he actually didn't deploy on the last turn, instead opting to keep, I think it was Bowmaster available. I mean, at this state in Legacy, you basically, whenever you see enough mana to cast Bowmaster early on in the game, you feel like, yeah, that's probably what's going to be.
And that's what it is. Here's Bowmaster from Daniel Rood. Has to tap Ancient Tomb for that. Down to 14 already is Daniel Rood. And enters the battlefield. We're going to go ahead and pick off the Dragon's Rage Channeler, which, hard to stop with Agatha's Soul Cauldron still in play, ready to disrupt Delirium at any time. But, as you mentioned, holding up bolts, Bowmasters, and all of the like. So Jon ready to respond to Bowmaster in turn, but does not. No rush as Daniel Rood develops an Urza Saga.
Interesting. I guess he's gonna try to just like then kill it on the attack step. Yeah. Where have I seen that play pattern before?
This is the play pattern, I guess, where you want to really leave no material for Daniel Rood. So here we're going to flash in the Bowmasters, pick off the Bowmasters, and then trade armies so that all that is left is your Bowmasters, and you're the only one with a piece of material left in play. Allows you to attack, maybe a little bit more beneficial for decks looking to actually attack with their Bowmasters, not just have it sticking around. But we do get to exile the Dragon's Rage Channeler and grow the Bowmasters with a +1/+1 counter, and then we can establish the block here with the army. So this waiting for attacks here plays out very nicely, enforcing the Agatha Soul Cauldron activation, still being able to trade the Bowmasters off. You do end up taking a point from the army either way, but you have a Bowmasters. All Daniel has is the army.
And Daniel is happy, right? Daniel is sitting on Urza Saga, which is about to start producing constructs and maybe even get the Pip-Boy 3000 we talked about earlier.
Yeah, get some more counters going, some draw discard. I mean, Daniel's low on resources, but has a lot of what he wants developed already developed. Agatha Soul Cauldron in play, Saga in play, ready to start making constructs next turn. There's already a lot kind of going in Daniel's favor, and still at a fairly high life total. Ancient Tomb really the only thing pressuring his life a little too much right now, but as we mentioned, Broadside Bombardier can change that very quickly.
Yeah, something I mentioned on my last podcast episode with my friends, we talked about how it felt like Urza Saga has fallen off a little bit. Actually, I didn't mention it on the podcast. I wanted to say it. I gotta make a note here. Okay.
Theoretical podcast.
Yeah, no.
For next episode. Future podcast.
The thing is, you lose a lot of life with the Ancient Tomb, and also like making constructs isn't the fastest thing in the world. And if you look at what Jon is doing, that's actually pretty fast. And that's threatening a kill rather quickly. And if you end up like losing another 2 life to make a construct and then another 2 life to make another one, and you don't have, let's say, Shadow Spear to try to race, Jon might actually like run all over you before you even get to attack with your first construct. And I think that's what might happen to Dania. So I'm not even sure. Like, I guess you make a construct here if you've got nothing else to do, but I think Dania would be a lot happier if he had something else to do.
Oh yeah, I think that's definitely true. Or at least another land and not have to use Ancient Tomb to make constructs as well would be a big upgrade for Daniel as well. But he doesn't care. No fear. Tapping Ancient Tomb down to 9 he goes, and it's his own copy of Broadside Bombardiers. Very powerful card from the Lost Caverns of Ixalan Commander. Has already shown up in Vintage Cube, now really making its waves here in Legacy, attacking with its Menace Haste ability, and then of course has the Boast ability, which it can use to more or less the flavors you're cannoning this thing. In this case, an entire army of orcs over at the other Broadside Bombardiers, and that's a great way to push damage. Things like Murktide Regent and Jon's deck's a great way to get things started, and there's plenty of high casting artifacts and creatures for Daniel Rude as well. So this card has the potential to represent a lot of non-combat damage, as well as just being a menacing attacker.
You know, Sauron should have tried that at Helm's Deep. Just fire the Goblin army into it.
Just hire some goblins from Ixalan to blast everybody. Just shoot your orcs out of cannons. It works way better. Can't you see? Here's an attack with the Orcish Bowmasters. Oh. Yeah. Brainstorm able to get off unimpeded, thanks to the Orcish Bowmasters being killed by Jon Bender. Daniel Rude down on Orcish Bowmaster count. And now we're looking at graveyards to see what we want to do with this Agatha's Soul Cauldron. Going to go ahead and exile the creature, get a counter on the on the Bombardiers. We have Bowmasters and Bombardiers. So many B rolls that I have to keep straight.
So much bombardiering. Yeah. And right now, like, Dania has completely turned around the game. Like, we just a turn ago, we talked about how Jon might just like outrace him super quickly. But now, I mean, that's part of like how Legacy has changed in some ways. Like, the swings got even bigger. And I guess we got a church cow over there as Dania is figuring something out there. I guess we removed something and put a counter.
I think we're asking about the Boast ability being an activated ability with Agatha's Soul Cauldron. Do you get, and this is something I do not know, is there ever a time where creatures with +1/+1 counters can use the Bombardier's ability if they are not Broadside Bombardiers?
The thing is, I think if you, at the very least, you should be able to boast and throw something. I think the thing I was wondering about before the match is whether you can actually throw something at any time. Actually, let me read the ability. If it says,
I assume that the boast word is just a shortcut for saying activate only if you've attacked this turn. So I would assume you do get to activate it, but only if you have attacked. Yeah. Now, obviously, the judges are going to handle this. I don't know how these words and stuff work. And when you start, patchworking creatures together with cards like Agatha's Soul Cauldron, really weird stuff happens, as we've already learned with Phyrexian Devourer. I don't really want to make any assumption, but hopefully we can get some clarity on that, as both players seem to have gotten an answer. And I don't think 2 instances of the ability matters just this moment, because Bombardiers already has the ability. But it wouldn't matter if you can activate it outside of combat, like you said.
Can you shoot like twice?
Yeah, because Boast is only once per turn, so maybe you actually can shoot twice. Ooh. Activate one, then activate the other. I bet you can. That's my guess. If I'm right about my assessment of things, then I'm correct. And now you at home, I would recommend Googling this. This is probably available on Google. That's not something we're going to do. We're going to see what the exact ruling would be from our judges that we employ and do a very good job. We'll also see, I guess, a live update. Hopefully we can hear from the back tables or something about what the exact ruling is, because I'm interested to hear, and changes the context of the game quite a bit if we can boast once or twice.
Yeah, I think at this point, Dania is already ready to just like completely take out Jon with the next attack. Maybe even this one. Like, this is like 4, and then you get to throw itself for like 5. That's like 9, and not quite there. I guess you can grow it one
short. With 2 boasts, I think we're short. Now, the Orcish army being able to attack next turn gives you 3 boasts, and we might be talking about lethal damage then. As here, Orcish Bowmaster is able to contribute a point of damage by itself and present 2 objects that can be shot out of cannons once again by the Bombardiers and do some damage to Jon. Now, kind of Daniel more or less flipping the script now in the aggro mode. Has a lot of damage to make up, a lot of ground to make up. Ancient Tomb did a lot of the work for Jon already. If Jon finds a good blocker, maybe things can start to change. A lot of bolts in Jon's hand.
I mean, if he only needs 3 bolts to win the game.
Sure, if he has 3 bolts, it's in. I think he has 2.
2 in a meltdown.
2, a Meltdown, and a Dragon's Rage Channeler. We're rereading this the Agatha Soul Cauldron card has so many words. And as you see, even an expert in the card like Daniel Rude, not necessarily sure where some of the corner cases come up with Broadside Bombardiers and cards of that nature. Jon definitely needs some help. If he has 3 bolts, it could be over right now. No counter spells really for them in Daniel Rude's deck.
If I'm Jon, I'm trying to create a scenario where Daniel taps this Ancient Tomb, but that's probably not going to happen.
Okay, so we're going Meltdown X equals 2. So this will clear Agatha's Soul Cauldron and the Lotus Petal, and then we can follow up afterwards with Dragon's Rage Channeler.
I think you'd rather take out the Bombardiers, right? Because they represent so much damage.
Maybe. I mean, we're only 1 bolt away from victory.
True.
Is that worth anything to you?
So if you're saying like you want to survive 1 more turn, and then if you get to attack with the Dragon's Rage Channeler and have the 3 bolts, then you get the surprise victory.
You still have a high life total, right? You're at 15. Can you take another hit or two? And if you find a cantrip, maybe you find a bolt or something. I don't know. I'm saying it's a line we could take.
The thing is, basically, I haven't done the math yet, but the way I know Legacy is that if Daniel untaps, he gets to deal 15 points of damage easily.
I think what we did here is we put the counter on the Bowmasters, and there goes
everything gets melted down.
Yeah, everything got melted down. No delirium for Jon. So we did use a bolt. So no longer on the triple bolt dream, but that's okay. Ancient Tomb's getting tapped, and now it's the double bolt dream.
Oh, and looks like we're headed for a 3rd game. Unless Daniel can actually create a scenario where he's able to deal 13 damage, but
he used one of the bolts to clear the Broadside Bombardiers, and here's another copy of Agatha's Soul Cauldron. So Jon actually only has 1 bolt left in hand. Does need to find another one. There's the Pip-Boy 3000, I believe. Get a look at this card from the new Fallout set. This one's not even on Magic Online. Here's some content you can only get in paper. Pip-Boy 3000. 1-mana artifact you can find off Urza's Saga equipment. Whenever equipped creature attacks, choose 1. You can either draw a card, discard a card, put a counter on that creature, or untap 2 target lands with an equip cost of 2. It's giving Umezawa's Jite a little bit.
Kinda, I guess. I mean, at this kind of broadside, you'll take any kind of advantage you can get. You don't really need all that much more to push across the finish line. With Daniel sitting in a pretty good spot, but on the other hand, I mean, we've all been there, right? We feel like, life total 6, then the opponent rips the bolt from the top and the game ends.
Yeah, I believe we just... Wait, do we have lethal here? We don't, right? We have Agatha Soul Cauldron with the Bombardiers underneath it. So assuming they have the post ability, let's assume they do because Daniel's doing counting. We take 4 damage here, down to 8. And then if you throw both the Pip-Boy and the Cauldron,
you take them down to 2,
4
right?
plus 3. That's not enough.
Plus 3? Plus 2, right?
Yeah, you're right. Plus 2. You're right.
So you take him down to 2, but he's got it on the next turn. Jon, awkward spot, can't really use any cantrips. I guess he doesn't also have any. This might be Delirious.
Yeah, it looks like we're missing creatures. So the Agatha Soul Cauldron exiling the creature last turn was important, and now definitely going to be very far away. Soul Cauldron's untapped once more. Does have a blocker in play, which I think currently lets him live, but I think really any object at all ends this game. I might even just be lethal right now, even with a blocking on the Bowmasters. Take 1 to 7, and then if the boast thing works, which I assume it does, again, we're assuming it does. We've not gotten confirmation on that ruling, but assuming you can activate the boast with these countered creatures,
I would think so, yes.
on them, then the game should be over.
Yeah. Now, last turn he could have taken Jon down to 2 life, and this turn I guess the only real question for him is do I attach the Pip-Boy? And which kind of ability am I even using? Maybe just like growing the creature. I think that's the most sensible way to play this.
Okay, so we're at the beginning of combat, and now here comes a Lightning Bolt. So this is the last copy of Lightning Bolt that Jon has in hand. His last card in hand is Hydroblast. Not looking very good against the current board, but this Bolt is strong. You can't go after the Bowmasters. If you do, there's another creature to exile, and you can just make it 4 power. So we have to actually go after the army, which does not feel good. And we leave the card on top, so no Delirium for Dragon's Rage Channeler.
By the way, that's a good line. Chat mentioned that. We could have also just sacrificed the Cauldron, which deals 4 damage. You don't need to sacrifice a creature. You can also sacrifice an artifact.
Right.
So we actually had lethal next turn, but I guess Daniel didn't see it. Neither did we.
Yeah, if you sack the Cauldron as the last ability, does that work? Is there any weirdness with that?
You just you sack Cauldron for 4 damage. And then, previously you sacked the Orcish Bowmaster for another 4 damage. But yeah, that's not what happened. Played out this way. So I'm wondering.
We blocked with Dragon Rage Channeler on the Orcish Bowmasters. Now we're in the second main phase, fetching with Bloodstained Mire. Didn't equip Pip-Boy 3000. Have to imagine he's got some other plans with his mana.
I'm glad he does. Not a big fan of that card, but
you just hate on the Pip-Boy. Would have been good. It pays for itself. It untaps 2 lands.
I just want to see Shadow Spear. I think Shadow Spear would be a much better card.
All right. Well, you should have a talk with Daniel Rude. You know what? If he wins this match, maybe you can have a talk with him. You can hash it out, duke it out with him.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of Fallout. Like, I absolutely love Fallout. I'm just like not a big fan of Pip-Boy 3000. But I can be swayed either way. I can see the card becoming a thing.
Ooh, it's Ponder into the face of Orcish Bowmaster. So that's actually going to create another Orc army and another attacker once this resolves and draws a card. Hydroblast among the mix. Looks like an Unholy Heat, Daze, and Fetch land. You can Unholy Heat the Bowmasters. You do have Delirium for the moment, but Agatha's Soul Cauldron can disrupt that. These cards don't look super great. Oh, it looks like
I love these scrappy games, by the way. Absolutely love this.
Yeah. This is tough. A tight spot for Jon Bender, and these Bowmasters really showing its power and its versatility present in both these decks. This Rakdos combo deck, all about artifacts, and of course Delver about more of a tempo game plan. Both decks supporting Orcish Bowmasters in high numbers. Also, both decks supporting Broadside Bombardiers. So these new cards that are making their impact on Legacy, these new creatures that are kind of can do both. They can really put pressure on your opponent, get the game over with very quickly, and they also have a little bit of extra versatility for picking off opposing creatures. As we're reading Agatha's Soul Cauldron. Yeah, I feel so bad for Jon. When I first read the card, I literally had this visceral reaction. I was like, I'm like 4 lines into this card, and I do not understand what's going on. I just don't know what it does.
So the easy step to understanding Soul Cauldron is you initially just ignore the very first 2 lines, which are about using mana basically as mana of any color to activate abilities, and then you just treat it as a Radical Progenitors plus the ability thing. Okay, so we use Unholy Heat to try and take out the Bowmasters to basically reset the game. And now Daniel is trying to see whether there's a way to steal Delirium so that the Bowmasters actually get to survive.
Yeah, he's asking, do you have Delirium? And now the question is, can I disrupt Delirium with the Agatha's Soul Cauldron? And I believe the answer to that question is yes. And assuming we do find that, we get to grow the Bowmasters by a point, as well as, and I think we're now checking to see if the Delirium checks on resolution is my guess, based on the fact we're calling a judge over. But assuming I'm correct about everything that is present, and that is a big assumption, we can put a counter on Bowmasters here in combat by exiling the Dragon's Rage Channel in the graveyard. That disrupts Delirium, keeps your Bowmasters alive, and then Jon is going to end up taking 4 points of damage off the bat, which puts him to 4, and then we can sacrifice the Soul Cauldron, like you mentioned, and actually just end the game right there on the spot, assuming no other trickery. But we are going to find out exactly what Daniel Rude does plan to do. No rush, as we've seen for Daniel Rude. All the bolts, we've seen 2 bolts already from Jon Bender. He would have to have the final 2 bolts in his deck in order to actually kill Daniel. So right now, no rush on that. And here it goes. And yeah, Jon Bender sees the writing on the wall. And with the exiling of the Dragon's Rage Channeler, using the Agatha Soul Cauldron, going to concede the game. And Daniel Rude going to win this game and match 2-0 over Jon Bender with his take on this Rakdos Welder combo deck.
This deck actually needs to have a proper name. This deck is way too good and way too fun not to have a name. Yeah, we're going to actually ask Daniel. Daniel's going to be the one to name the deck. Hopefully it's going to be something.
While we get Daniel set up to ask him about the name of this deck, among other things. Also apparently about Shadow Spear, which didn't need it. And was able to beat Grixis Delver without the use of Shadow Spear. Pip-Boy 3000 did get a little involved briefly, but for the most part, that game and match seemed very much about Agatha's Soul Cauldron. Both games seem really, really decided by that card in various ways, sometimes as a graveyard hate, sometimes as a combo piece. And really with 4 copies in this Welder deck, kind of showcasing more or less maybe the best Agatha's Soul Cauldron in Legacy?
Probably. Honestly, probably. I've been somewhat vocal about that. I don't think Paint is very good in Legacy right now, but it has a lot of cool cards, right? And a lot of cards. I think the one card that can make it still playable is Soul Cauldron. And now this deck approaches it from the other side. This deck is saying, yeah, Soul Cauldron is a good card in Legacy, so let's remove all the Painter stuff and keep the Soul Cauldron around. Not as the way I was thinking previously, let's keep the Painter stuff and make that good. It's like, no, we make the thing that makes it good and put the bad stuff away. And I love that. I have no idea. Like, this deck feels like it's a work in progress, or maybe it has been like completely hashed out and NASA ran the numbers and decided this is how you play the game. And that's also where Pip-Boy 3000 comes in. But Danny is going to tell us in a moment, I would think. And I'm super excited for that because, like, scrappy games, and then you throw in those two Entombs. Like, the thing is, Entomb can actually win you the game there. In a lot of spots when the opponent doesn't see it come. Like, you Entombed that Phyrexian Devourer on attack after your opponent didn't block, and you have Soul Cauldron, GG, it's over. And I do not expect Soul Cauldron. I do not expect Entomb during combat against this kind of deck. Now I do, because I watch energy.
A trick.
Yeah.
So sick. Well, we'll hear exactly what the process was for Daniel Rude. I believe we have him waiting in the wings here. Now 3-0. Daniel, let's get down to you. How's it going? How you feeling? Congratulations.
Good, yeah. Yeah, fun.
So talk to me a little bit about your deck choice. So this is something that I know Julian is someone, he is very vocal about Painter. So I want to talk about, where you kind of found this deck. Did you develop it? Did you build on somebody else's idea, and kind of the decision to play at this event?
I've also been a Painter player forever. So it was 3 days ago that I actually took the Painter combo out of this deck as well. So I've been playing Painter a long time. I add the Cauldrons because I just think they're really good right now, given all the Reanimator, Rescaminator, all that kind of stuff. So it just has a lot of splash damage against the field. And gradually, it just kept pulling away Painter pieces and adding more Cauldron pieces. And so it was a toss-up 2 days ago if I was going to play Painter in the list or not, and I ended up not doing it.
Okay, so it was a close decision between Painter and this build of just like this Welder combo deck. Do you have a name for it? We keep calling it Rakdos combo.
That's one thing. Like you are bestowed the right to name this deck because this deck is way too cool to only be called Rakdos combo.
Yeah, I call it. Well, so I have on MTGO, I have like 7 versions of this list. This one I call Chaos Cauldron. So.
Chaos Cauldron. Okay, that's a cool name. All right,
okay.
That name's awesome. Chaos Cauldron.
Wizards is going to copyright that thing. We're going to get like at least a set, if not a card, that has that name. Chaos Cauldron. It is.
There you go. I like it.
Talk to us about Pip-Boy 3000 because that's the card people like. When I still play Painter, people are like, "Can we make this work in Painter?" And I don't think we make it work in Painter. You make it work here. Do you like this better than Shadow Spear?
It's close. So the reason I like it is because a lot of times you don't have enough creatures attacking that have a +1 counter on it, like when you have the combo out, and so they're just kind of like throwing one blocker out to kind of foil your plan. So I like Pip-Boy because it lets you drop any of the combo pieces that you don't want in your hand into your graveyard. It also puts a +1 counter, also untaps obviously a couple lands, especially if you have a Saga out, like make an extra construct with that. So it's been good.
Okay.
If there was a lot of burn in the field, I probably would be playing Shadow Spear, but as is, I'm playing this.
Awesome. One more thing we were wondering, maybe that was what the judge call was about as well. If a single creature has 2 instances of the Broadside Bombardier ability, the Boast ability, can it sacrifice something twice or still only once?
The judgment call was it can sacrifice something twice.
Wow. Okay.
Wow, that's powerful, and that's a huge power upgrade to your deck too. I mean, you have 3 copies of Broadside Bombardiers, 4 copies of Agatha Soul Cauldron. This is something that's probably going to come up throughout the day: is the ability to get the Broadside Bombardiers under your Cauldron and make your creatures be able to boast up to once, maybe even twice. I mean, that's really powerful.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, it wasn't even on my radar until my opponent got it. It's like, oh, yeah.
I didn't know either. Broadside Bombardier is so powerful. Worth include. Yeah, that's so sick.
Awesome.
All right. Congratulations. You are 3-0 now with your take on this deck. I hope to see a little bit more of you and this deck throughout the day, and maybe even to the top 8 if things go your way. You had an impressive performance there against Grixis Delver, one of the best decks in the format. Any final shout outs before you move on to your next round?
Discord. Painter Discord. Love you guys.
Great Discord.
Yeah.
Very much recommended.
All right, Daniel Rude. Thank you very much.
Deal, man. Good luck for the rest.
Thanks a lot.
Good luck in the rest. And so that was awesome. Chaos Cauldron, huh? His take on Chaos Cauldron. Love it a lot. Very cool deck. And maybe even some things to learn about. You said the deck may be figured out. I think if we're learning little niche interactions like that, as is kind of iconic about Legacy, a lot of small micro interactions like that come up constantly, then I think there's still plenty to figure out about this Chaos Cauldron deck that Daniel Root has brought his take on. So we are going to, it looks like that's going to actually be it for our rounds of Legacy. And before we move on to a break, I want to talk briefly about our upcoming events. So next in line for season 1 is going to be our NRG Indianapolis. We're going to find our way there in May 11th, May 12th, where we will have more modern action for you. We had quite a bit of modern this weekend already with a showdown won by Dominic Harvey and his take on Amulet Titan. If you want to find yourself in that seat as well, find yourself in Indianapolis on Saturday to play in our modern 10K showdown. The top 4 will qualify for the regional championship, and of course, the winner will find their way to the NRG Championship at the end of the year as well. But that's not all, as there is a 10K team showdown on Sunday as well, where you can play Modern alongside Standard Pioneer with your friends and qualify for the NRG Championship by winning. And of course, the 2 finalist teams, that'll be 6 players total, will qualify for the Regional Championship through that event as well. And then for the final event for season 1, to cap things off, we're going to find our way in St. Louis for NRG St. Louis. That'll be there in June 22nd and 23rd for a Pioneer Showdown, some high stakes Pioneer on Saturday, where you can, again, qualify for the Regional Championship or even for the NRG Championship by winning it all, as long as many, many other goodies. And then on Sunday, if you just can't get enough of Modern, there's a little bit more Modern action for you for a 5K Modern Trial that is akin to the event we're playing right now in Legacy. With that mouthful out of the way, that will wrap up round number 3. Julian and I will be back very shortly to bring you more Legacy action from round number 4. Do not go anywhere. And of course, as always, if you want to stick around, you want to support us, please follow, please subscribe if you want to remove ads. But no matter what, don't go anywhere. We'll be back shortly.